Archibalds, two Archibalds, and an Alan Archibald.
Hello, and welcome to Draw, Lose or Draw. This is our first episode in our 12 Days of Archie series, where we're going to release an episode each day for the next 12 days, looking back on one of Alan Archibald's finest moments at the club each day. Up first, Jamie McDonald spoke to us about his memories of our 2-1 win at Airdrie in the 12-13 promotion season.
That
Airdrie game it's a game that maybe not remembered by everybody as much, but obviously because of the Morton game obviously overshadows that a bit. But that Airdrie game was huge to us that season. I mean, we were losing to a team that we really shouldn't have.
We now get the Airdrie lowdown on that game from Colin Telford from the Only the Lonely podcast.
Yeah, for the season in question, leading up to the game that we're talking about, Airdrie weren't supposed to be in the championship that year. We had lost the final the year before against Dumbarton, which was a bit of a painful one. Losing on the playoff final, the first leg was a draw down at Dumbarton. You're hoping to win the home game, and we took a bit of a doing. But then the whole debacle with Rangers unfolded, and I think it was maybe as little as 10 days notice Airdrie were promoted, which sounds great, but we'd built a squad to compete in the league below. The season actually got off to a good start. We played Dumbarton, who we'd just lost the last competitive game to at home in the first day, and we won 4-1. And we won at Livingston the next week, so we're off to 2 wins from 2. However, the wheels come off shortly thereafterwards. The win against Dumbarton on opening day at home was our only home victory that season. We had just a very long toil. Dumbarton had been down at the bottom of the league with us, and we'd managed to win at their place, which made it look as if they were dead and buried. At which point, Ian Murray takes the Dumbarton job, who's now obviously our manager, and went on an incredible run. So we ended up marooned at the bottom. So the game against Thistle, as well as it being key in you winning the title, was the game that mathematically relegated us, but it didn't feel that big a deal. It felt like the writing was on the wall, and the only team that we were in touch with was Dunfermline, and that was only because they'd had a 15-point deduction. So it was a long and pretty horrible season, and the Thistle game was right towards the end of it, and whereas you guys were obviously in a very different place.
Yeah, very much. It feels like the not so much the cherry, but whatever the bad version of a cherry is on a really bad cake for yourselves.
The shit in the sandwich, I think it might be. But
yes, exactly.
Thistle's first match against Airdrie that campaign had been an eventful one, with a familiar face in between the sticks for the visiting side.
In October, Thistle had defeated Airdrie 7-0 at Firhill, their biggest ever win over the Diamonds. Former Thistle keeper and current goalkeeping coach for Thistle, Kenny Arthur, was in goals that day as he conceded 7 goals, 2 from Chris Erskine, a penalty against Aaron Muirhead, as well as goals from Stevie Lawless, Sean Welsh, Chris Doolan and Ross Forbes, in what was a humiliating day for Airdrie fans.
Despite doing the double over Airdrie at Firhill that season, the first game at the Excelsior Stadium saw Thistle fail to end a hoodoo that had haunted them for decades.
Someone had posted on Pie and Bovril or one of the forums that Thistle hadn't won in Airdrie for, it was a crazy number of years. I mean, it was maybe as much as 20 years across both Airdrie pre and post liquidation. So you kind of sitting in the first game when we're having this awful season, and you guys were doing really well. We scored early on, kind of backs to the wall a bit for the rest of the game. You scored with about 10 minutes to go, but it finished a 1-each draw.
This particular game saw Thistle finally exorcise the ghosts of a painful defeat from 16 years earlier.
Well, it was more. I was delighted to be invited on your podcast to talk about a famous Airdrie defeat. So I just said to you there was a similar game from our perspective. So 1997, so a wee bit before, and Airdrie were at that stage. We'd still been playing at Broadwood in Cumbernauld, and we had a really good season. It was when there was a playoff to get into the Premier League, as it was at that time, but it was between second top and second bottom, which I actually think is a much fairer system of playoff rather than being able to sneak in fourth place. But that's a different conversation. So it was either St Johnstone or Dundee were clear in the league, but Airdrie were having this really good season, and they'd gone on a bit of a run, and we came to we came to Firhill, and Thistle weren't having a great season, so it made me just think it was quite similar. But Thistle go 1-0 up. And then not only that, into the second half, Gareth Evans, who come from Hibs, gone to Partick Thistle, later played for Airdrie, got put through, and John Martin, who was a goalkeeper of about 20 years for us, was always really good on one-on-ones, was fearless in rushing out and diving at players' feet. Does that with Gareth Evans, but they get in a bit of a tangle, and Gareth Evans' boot breaks John Martin's cheekbone, and apparently was very close to, if it had been a bit over, it could have blinded him in that eye. So it's a pretty bad injury. It's a big long pause. Airdrie have already used, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 substitutions in those days, so we've got no one left to bring on. Our centre forward goes in goals, and we come back from 1-0 down to win 2-1, and it was Stevie Cooper, who sadly died a few years ago, but was a great striker for Airdrie for a few years, but had been a gymnast in a former life, and I think he could have been a good goalkeeper. I mean, his kickouts were about 70 yards, so he was launching attacks off the kickouts. Paddy Connolly was his strike partner, who was famous for scoring one of the 2 ghost goals at Firhill. So the one that was against Dundee United years ago and hit the stanchion and came back out, the defender caught it and kicked it away. That's very famous in Scottish football. He'd scored that goal. He was playing for Airdrie that day. But it was just kind of unbelievable. And we went on a run. We got to the playoff. Unfortunately, we lost to Hibs. But similar, just like that, sometimes when you've got a winning team and the spirit's there, just the way that they can stick in there and get the late victory.
This game certainly lived up to the blood and thunder hype of Airdrie Thistle games of old. Plenty of controversy, plenty of goalkeeping heroics. It had everything.
Looking back at highlights of the game, Airdrie's keeper Robbie Thompson actually made several great saves throughout the game. He frustrated Thistle, just threw everything forward in vain trying to get a goal to no avail. Airdrie honestly could have been 2-0 when Andy Dowie pulled down goal scorer Liam Watt in the box, with Dowie somehow avoiding a red card as the referee denied a penalty, which surely would have killed the game off, to be honest, if they'd been given it. A few moments later, Airdrie were also lucky not to have a man sent off themselves when Sean Lynch cynically wiped out an on-goal Chris Erskine, but Thomason was able to stop Aaron Taylor-Sinclair's free kick, and when shouts of Airdrie handball were ignored later on, it just looked like it wasn't Thistle's day.
And so when we come to the game which relegated us later on in the season, our second home game, again we score to go 1-0 up, having been under bombardment from me. I mean, I just remember the game was really one-sided, and we scored against the run of play. And then the second half, looking at the team, because we said we were going to do this call, there's Ricky Lammy, who's now at Motherwell and was at Livingston, so he's got himself to the Premier League, and Gregor Buchanan were the centre-half pairing, and Gregor Buchanan's at Alloa and has bounced about teams, Dunfermline, Falkirk, around our level for his career. So it was, I guess, was a bit of talent there in the centre of defence, and it was just a stout performance. And we talked when I was on before, Airdrie Thistles, we'd see it as a bit of a rivalry, and there's like a not a song that ever really gets sung in the grounds, but you'll maybe get it on the buses. Airdrie fans will sing to the tune of Dad's Army, "Who do you think you are kidding, Partick Thistle, if you think old Airdrie's done?" So yeah, I was thinking, I just remember sitting there and thinking, we're rubbish. And yeah, here's Thistle, for whatever reason, we seem to have a really good record against you. Humming that away in my head, quite enjoying the fact that we were maybe going to be a span in the works for your promotion push. However, the counted my chickens far too soon. Key memory of the game is, I was looking again for this. The crowd was only 1,600. I actually thought it might have been more than that, but I mean, that could have been easily twice the number of Thistle fans. You had the stand opposite us, it was quite busy. And then they get the goal. You hoped it wasn't coming, but the pressure was there, and you scored that first goal on, I think it was about 87 minutes, maybe even later, and just the noise, because you'd been quite quiet because it would have been a kind of nervy performance, wanting to get over the line, not having a lot to shout about, and it just erupted, and you kind of, our hearts sunk a bit because you're hoping to steal a victory and just have at least one bright point in a season, and you could kind of tell the second goal might well come, despite how little time there was. You could feel the will of your fans. It's probably one of the best examples where, especially with empty grounds just now, you really felt the crowd made a difference that day. And I'm not really into all the be the 12th man and stuff, but just the momentum in the game, everything changing, your tails being up. I was talking to another Thistle fan about this on our podcast, and he said he remembers distinctly the players grabbing the ball and running towards the halfway line. So the Thistle players were definitely, we can go on and do this, whereas the Airdrie players were just dejected that they hadn't managed to hold on. And sure enough, then to put the cherry on your particular cake, the second goal comes.
Die moments of the game. Chris Elliott scored with a volley with his left foot. It was like a P-roll, or it was like a grass cutter, wasn't it? Right hand corner, I'm sure. Right in there. And it led to absolute scenes in the away end.
While scenes of joy unfolded in the away end, there was one Thistle fan wailing in despair. Our podcast's own David Forrest.
I technically went to this game, but didn't. So basically, what is I think my bus had a puncture or something like that on the way to the ground, and I was late. As anyone who has ever been in this podcast will know, I'm late for everything, but especially on this day, or my bus got a puncture. And basically, I was sitting there like just fuming, and I managed to get there. Like, quite a bit after kickoff, and they just shut the gates.
Oh.
And I was like, "Can you let me in?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "No, really, seriously, no joke. Can you let me in?" "No, absolutely not." And then I literally went round the whole stadium trying to find a way to get in, and they're just like, "No, shut, go away," and all that. So they get everything they fucking deserve for not letting me in. All I'm saying is, if they let me in, we'd have probably get beat 3-0 and they wouldn't have been relegated. But that's on them. Airdrie Football Club. You've reaped what you sow. I get it up, bees.
They didn't let you in.
They didn't let me in.
You know, I had that at our place as well once. It was maybe even the last ever Airdrie Onions games before home game, and like that, I turned up late, and so the turnstiles are shut. So you think fair enough, and then like go to the front reception desk, and oh no, sorry, can't let anyone in after 20 past or something. Yeah, what's the point in that? I mean, that's like a nightclub bouncer, isn't it? Telling you you've had too much to drink when you've had 3 beers or something. It's just. Or you've got the wrong shoes on. What harm was it really going to do to take your 15 quid or whatever it would have been in those days from you and let you through? So, well, there you go. I agree with you. We probably did deserve it for for that, because that's how hoity-toity is that for a football club not letting a fan in?
The dramatic win saw Thistle go 8 points clear of their closest challengers, Greenock Morton, and put one hand on that Division 1 trophy.
And the desire to turn it around. Balatoni in the 89th minute, popping up the header from a corner, and then Christy Elliott about 2 minutes later in stoppage time, getting the winner. And the scenes in the stand, it's amazing watching that game on, and like a highlight of that game on YouTube or something. It's great to see it. Just the passion from the players at full time. That game is just a huge part of winning the title.
That goal, it wasn't a season defining goal, but it was an important goal in the title race, because I think it was like the 4th or 5th last game of the season or something like that. It was towards the tail end of the season. Live long the memory of Thistle fans. And seeing it on social media, the reactions for the Thistle fans on social media, and hearing people talking about it. it sounds like it would have been fucking unreal. And then I remember just watching all the games for the promotion season, games that I didn't go to, games that I went to, and games that I missed and all that kind of stuff. And it was amazing. That's one of the highlights. That's one of the ones that I like to go back on to watch.
Thistle were undoubtedly the better side that day. You had a very good season. I wouldn't begrudge any of that. We're just hoping to cause a bit of an upset, and almost did. But instead we're part of a game which I think is one that you guys remember very fondly.
Thank you for joining us on Draw, Lose or Draw, and our first of our new series, The 12 Days of Archie. It was narrated by Matt Greer, edited by David Forrest, with contributions from Kieran, Ashton, Jamie McDonald and Colin Telford. As always, stay safe and wear a mask.